Let me jump to another story here that caught my attention. I'm going to show you this first. Let me show you this headline. That's not the one I want. That's the one I want. Okay, check this out. Megachurch helps California school board blur church-state divide. And I remember this story because look at the date on this. April of 2015. This is a story that's like 8 years old now, but it involves Chino Valley School District in California. And the story here, which I think is worth talking about in some detail, it involves a school board with 5 members on it. And in 2015, the reason this school board made headlines is because 3 of the 5 members were super conservative and members of the same megachurch. And this is where it got annoying because what happened when 3 members of a megachurch took over a public school district? Well, you had Bible verses being recited during school board meetings. They were calling for people to accept Jesus at these meetings. They also pointed out in this article that the church in question was the Calvary Chapel Chino Hills Megachurch, which is run by a guy named Jack Hibbs, who is better known today as like this really Trumpy, MAGA promoting Christian nationalist pastor. And here's what happened years ago. Those 3 members, their names are Andrew Cruz, James Na, Sylvia Orozco. They basically turned every school board meeting into a church service. There were prayers and rants against gay marriage at a school board meeting. I mean, that's what these things were turning into. And the Freedom from Religion Foundation sued that school board and those members specifically because they were praying at school board meetings. And the Freedom from Religion Foundation said you can't pray at school board meetings. You can barely get away with it at city council meetings, no matter what the Supreme Court says, but you absolutely cannot do it at school board meetings. Long story short, their Christian prayers, like a judge said, they lost. The school board appealed. The appellate court said, you lost. The school board appealed again to the full appellate court, and the full appellate court said, dude, you lost. The only option was going to the Supreme Court, which would have been even more money that they didn't have. And finally, the school board said, we're not fighting this anymore. We give up. We've lost this case. It cost the district over $282,000. That's what happened when megachurch members ran this school board. That's why they were making headlines in 2015. By the way, Andrew Cruz, one of those members, there's video of him where he goes on this long rant during the school board meeting, not just trashing gay marriage for some reason. He invokes the Confederate flag, and like not in a bad way. He argues that racism is done now because it's 2015. He's complaining about mandatory vaccination laws in California long before COVID. He's just going on this right wing, he wants to be a Fox News host type of rant, right? And then on the flip side of that, with one of those other board members, James Na, Jack Hibbs was promoting him in a personal capacity, which is legal, but weird. And then the church's social media pages praised James Na because he was trying to shove a Bible in public schools curriculum into the district, and he was successful in doing it. So the church is praising him through the church's social media. And at one point, reporters asked Jack Hibbs, like, why you're totally endorsing candidates from the pulpit, and that goes against IRS guidelines. You can't do that. Like, what do you have to say to critics who say you can't endorse a candidate from the pulpit? And let me show you what he said. This would be cooler if I had the timing all right, but here it is. Hibbs turns that restriction on its head, inviting candidates to his church and then telling the congregation he's not legally allowed to endorse anyone during the church service from behind the pulpit. So then I just walk in front of the pulpit, bless the candidates, and say how great he or she is and that I am voting for them, and then go back behind the pulpit. Ha ha ha. He's not actually behind the pulpit. Therefore, he's like, I can totally endorse candidates because I did it from here instead of here. Which, to be clear, that still violates the law, and that's not fair at all. And his church has no business being tax exempt from the IRS. But guess what? The IRS doesn't do anything about it. Okay. The point is, this is what this school board was like in 2015, just constant Christianity, Christian nationalism throughout. So imagine my surprise this week when I see this headline in the Daily Beast: the California Megachurch pushing public schools to the far right. And I saw that headline and I'm like, they can't be talking about Chino Valley again. But they were. Of course they were. Because it turns out that third member of their trifecta, Sylvia Orozco, she was not on the school board after all that stuff happened years ago. There was like this lull. And recently, last November, I believe, this woman whose picture you see here, her name is Sonia, what's her name? Sonia Shaw. She's also from that same megachurch. She got elected to the school board, and Andrew Cruz and James Knott are still there. So they got 3 members from the same megachurch on this 5-member board. And by the way, there's a 4th member who's just a conservative who's on the board who agrees with them about everything. So again, they've taken over the school board again. And guess what it looks like now? At this point, their latest thing is they're banning pride flags in classrooms because that's a priority. They want to force educators to inform parents if their kids identify as transgender or want to use a different pronoun or want to use a different name. They want teachers to have to inform parents about that, which is, I believe right now, California, like the Democrats in charge, are suing the school districts saying you can't pass a policy like that. And I also have to say, it's just a bad policy because if you're a parent and your kid is trans and going by a different pronoun and things like that, and they're not telling you about it, one, it shouldn't be the teacher's obligation to rat them out. But 2, it probably means you're a shitty parent because your kid doesn't want to talk to you about this stuff. They don't trust you with it. And the reason it's bad policy is because if they don't trust you with it, then telling parents about what their kids are doing, it's putting the kids in danger. Because what are those anti-trans parents going to do to their kids if they're doing something like that? So horrible anti-child policy. Oh, and by the way, Sonia Shaw, that woman whose picture you saw, that who was newly elected from the megachurch, she hangs out with the Proud Boys. She's courting right-wing extremists. When the superintendent of schools in California appeared at a school board meeting to kind of talk to them about the anti-LGBTQ stuff they were doing, she shouted him down and then shut off his microphone. When the Daily Beast basically asked her, like, so you're basically doing Jack Hibbs' bidding, right? She's like, I've never met Jack Hibbs. I've never been brought up on stage. That's what she said. And check this out. I want to show you this from the article. Yeah. I've never met Jack Hibbs. I've never been brought up on stage, she said. 1 month later, however, Hibbs introduced her at the pulpit, telling his Sunday service that she's truly going up against the machine before leading a prayer for her victory. Shaw bowed her head as Hibbs lifted a hand in the air and declared, "She has decided, Lord, to take on the wokeism that is attacking our children." As if woke is a monster that is like, I don't know, going after kids, and not the school board that is literally passing policies to hurt kids. But she won that race, and now they're just taking over the district. I don't know how to say this more clearly. If you live anywhere in the US, the reason people like this get elected is not because they're in the majority. It's because most people don't care about school board elections or any local elections. Sonia over there won her election, I think, by like 300 some votes. There are so many people in that community that if they banded together solely on like what sort of policies do you want at the school board, it would not be for the things she is pushing. But the church and Jack Hibbs gets their members to vote for their people. So they can dominate a lot of these local races if no one else is paying attention. If the community got their shit together and said, listen, our schools are being destroyed. And by the way, if the schools are being destroyed, your property values are probably being destroyed too. So there is a selfish reason to get interested in this stuff. Um, and that's kind of the only way to fix all this. There is one member of that school board who is more progressive and more liberal. And the Daily Beast said, like, so what do you think about all this stuff? And the bottom line is that guy said, look, the next election is November of 2024, and there are 3 seats up for grabs. That's the majority. If the community banded together against these Christian extremists who don't like kids, who want to just use it as a Sunday school and nothing else, if the community banded together, found a slate of 3 and only 3 candidates, and said, everybody, vote for these 3 people, they are sane. They could be Christian, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. But these are sane candidates who care about schools and experts in the field, and they care for our children and making sure they have a good experience in high school. That's how you defeat these Christian nationalists who are taking over these school boards. But I know it's really hard to get people to care about these issues. It's hard to get them to vote in local elections in off years. Like most people, if they vote at all, they only do it when it's a presidential election. And it's hard to get people to vote in off year elections. You know what's even harder than like midterm elections? School board elections that take place some other time in the year. Um, I used to be one of those people who didn't vote in local elections or didn't pay attention to local politics. And now I absolutely try my best to vote in every election I can. And I reach out on Facebook to like local progressive groups if I don't know the candidates. And it's like, hey, who should I be voting for? Where are your endorsements? Just make it easy for me here, because I haven't paid attention to these races, because usually they know the candidates, they know who's running. It's not hard to do. And if people watching this live stream or something like it don't care, well, then you're ceding ground to the Christian nationalists who absolutely care, and that would be a mistake. Please don't let that happen.